California.
Welcome back to Menlo Park, California, live this morning. We are at Facebook headquarters. That is a chopper shot of Hacker Square, which is the cultural center of Facebook headquarters. The words hack are literally written in cement, which you can actually see from the air. We're expecting Mark Zuckerberg to ring the NASDAQ opening bell shortly. We're being told Sheryl Sandberg actually speaking right now. The NASDAQ's Bob Greifeld is expected to speak as well before the bell rings at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Brian Sullivan, meantime, back at the NYSE. Brian?
Hey, thanks, Carl. Yeah, we got coast-to-coast coverage here, and back at the NYSE, we've got a recent IPO being celebrated. Forum Energy Technologies, FET is the ticker. They went public back in mid-April, but they're ringing the bell this morning. Got a lot of people here from Houston. And you know what? I know, Carl, it's cool to be on the interweb or whatever that thing is, but I like what Forum does because they make, among other things, underwater vehicles, subsea rovers, you know, robots to go down and check out drilling rigs. And I don't know about you, but I just think that underwater robots kind of trump sitting at home on your computer any day of the week. But hey, that's just me, Carl. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Brian Sullivan. Jim, Melissa, David, you guys still back in the NASDAQ?
Oh, we're here. We're here waiting for the big bell, Carl.
There is a live jib shot of Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg to his right, Bob Greifeld to his left. And we should say, Jim, what coup this is for the NAS.
Yeah, this is really big because we often debate these two institutions dueling. I remember the time when Microsoft decided to be able to be on the NASDAQ, and that was a seminal moment of NASDAQ, of embracing the NASDAQ to a point where we no longer thought it was the over-the-counter market. This is a huge win, and I got to tell you something. I think that it's going to be market preeminence.
Yeah, and we should know we're going to be speaking with Bob McCooey, who is the man who helped bring in Facebook to the NASDAQ market site. That interview is coming up. And, of course, it is a coup as well for Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan. Imagine, Carl, remember the day they were hoisting that Facebook flag up? When those road shows were starting, quite a different story for JP Morgan from then till now, although still a coup.
We are witnessing a lot of American wealth getting generated as we speak. After years of people taking risks, dealing with uncertainty, unknowns, rivals, and this is the payoff, the opening bell, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. And we'll say it again this morning, this is a moment in American business, and we do not know how it's going to turn out. We do not know how we're going to talk about this day in 5 or 10 years, but given what we have right now, you have to say it opens a new chapter, an exciting chapter for business in this country. Wouldn't you agree?
Carl, yes, I do. I want to know whether you think, because you're right out there in the thick of it, are people jealous in this country of these people, or are people proud of them? Obviously, people must be proud.
I think that it goes both ways. What Mark Zuckerberg has accomplished is the substance of everybody's American dream. To have a great idea, build a business, and become a multi-billionaire, isn't that what everybody dreams about when they come to...
7 years.
Exactly.
That's incredible. I can't imagine that people wouldn't look at that and be proud.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's creativity, that's ingenuity, and that is still one of the greatest capital markets in the world as well. The ability not just to raise money, by the way, today, but to raise it all along the way to help fund it and bring it to fruition. That's still what we've got going for us here that really you can't replicate anywhere else.
David, let's say it opens at 11. At 11:30, do we not put Facebook through the prism of Spanish banks, of Greek banks, prism of JP Morgan, leading. At what point do we regard Facebook as another stock?
Yeah, probably 11:31, something like that.
And I think that's important for people at home who are thinking that it's a Woodstock event.
By the way, one of the larger market cap companies will, and certainly will represent a significant portfolio commitment for many investment managers out there, but also could end up being a source of funds when we find those risk-off days that we so often have encountered lately.
And at this size, in terms of market cap, the speculation will start right now, or maybe when the stock starts trading, as to when this stock will be added to the NASDAQ 100, when it will be added to the S&P, I mean, when it will be added to the various indices.
Look, it's very important because people have to understand that there's this concept called weightings, where large institutions, whether they like it or not, will have to buy. S&P funds, whether they like it or not, or think it's overvalued, they will buy. That's the institutional component of craziness that we have to deal with. Obviously, the individual component of craziness is the longer this thing doesn't open, the more we talk about it, the more we're going to get people saying, I want a piece of Facebook, instead of just going on Facebook, and that's where the problems begin. People at home, you use those market orders. You, in the history of all these kinds of companies, you use market orders, you lose money. Now, that is not what people want to hear. Maybe people feel it's a touchstone of American culture and they don't care. But in the end, 48 hours from now, you're going to care plenty when you lose money.
And remember, if you think that you lost your chance to get in on this IPO, there could be many opportunities in the future, because the lockup periods are a little bit different on this particular issue. 91 days is when the first lockup expires, and the free float will increase by 55% in 91 days.
To 1 billion shares, I believe, or close to it, if I'm not mistaken. I know I'm looking at Rich Greenfield's work here on this from BTIG. And by the way, at 180 days, Melissa, we're talking a full float of 2.2 billion
the number of shares will double in 180 days.
Well, doesn't that just sound like it can overwhelm the market? I mean, we're in a market where, hey, there's two markets here. There's Facebook, which is fabulous, and there's everything else, which is one of the worst markets we've seen in many years. I think it's important to point out, we have one of the worst stock markets we have seen in many years.
Many years, you think so? I mean, it doesn't...
Rival to 2011, maybe October of 2011. Rival to 2011, 2010, in terms of, here's what I'm using, benchmark, because you put it up yesterday, versus the yield of treasuries versus the price-to-earnings multiples. There's one price-to-earnings multiple, it's Facebook, and then there's everybody else's price-to-earnings multiple. Let's talk Apple for 1 second and deviate here. You've got Apple that had been basically in free fall for multiple days. That had been the icon.
And do you think it's because the officer got sucked out of the room when it comes to the Facebook trade? Were there shares sold, as David had pointed out yesterday, were there shares sold in anticipation of getting an allocation for Facebook and making room in one's portfolio?
Yes. I'm going to say yes to that. You have to raise money to take in Facebook. It's such a big deal that people don't have that much cash on hand. The way managers can be able to get cash on hand is to hit that 550, 540, 530 bid of Apple, and then bingo.
And then, oh, by the way, the fundamentals for this quarter are weak. Fundamentally weak, and if you were to believe that a new iPhone is coming to market anytime soon, nobody's going to be buying the old thing. I mean,
there's a hole.
They're not.
There's a hole, and I know that Verizon Wireless is hoping that this is when they can sell some Androids. By the way, I do want to point out that while there is weak, people think that there might be a hole in Apple. It is selling on a $50 basis. People think you can earn $50 next year. It's a heck of a lot cheaper than Facebook.
No doubt, and that's, by the way, including cash. If you X out the cash on hand, the multiple falls even more on Apple. By the way, we should point out it has lost, I think, the equivalent of Facebook's market value at its IPO price over the last few weeks. Over $100 billion lost in Apple's market capitalization, given that more than 17% decline in the stock price.
Context, context, context. Your kid, your 16-year-old might say, I want some Facebook. Your 60-year-old portfolio manager is thinking, how do I avoid the debacle of a Greek bank run? He's not thinking about the idea that, wow, my son is or my daughter's on Facebook all the time, other than trying to figure out how to shut it down.
Is Carl out there still? Can he hear it? There he is. Yeah, watching you. By the way, tie-less, which I know is a rule when you go on the West Coast, right, Carl? Can't wear the tie.
If I had a tie on, they would say, what's that thing around your neck? I mean, there's not even a debate about wearing a tie. Some of the statistics, guys, are pretty amazing. Raising $16 billion this morning, you probably have heard this, that's more than the individual market caps of 2/3 of the S&P companies. If Zuckerberg sold his $19 billion stake, he could buy Kellogg all to himself. He could buy Heinz all to himself. He could buy Yahoo all to himself. And of course, we don't know where that wealth is going to go by the end of the day. At a market value of $104 billion, only 21 S&P companies have a bigger market cap. It is ahead of Amazon. It is ahead of Cisco. Just the metrics are mind-blowing. Also, a few of these tweets that have been coming out, really, really fascinating. Randy Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg's sister, writes, "So proud of my brother on eve of tech's biggest IPO. Related, hey Mark, now can you pay me that $10 I lent you for our lemonade stand?" A large part of this discussion is going to happen not on television airwaves, but on the web itself. How appropriate.
Again, I want to come back. I hear these great stories. I want to temper a little enthusiasm, only because exactly what Carl said. Think about how many companies that are just bigger than and how successful those companies have been. Carl, are they conscious of the fact that this company, does anyone think this company could be overvalued within the 2-mile blast zone that you're in right now?
Well, I think the insider selling, and we've been talking about this for the past couple of weeks here, Jim, that is a clue, right? That is a clue about sentiment in some fashion. We had Kevin Landis on the show yesterday. Faber, you were there, Melissa as well. His take is, look, who's going to sell if not the insiders already? So I'm curious to know, where do you think the debate stands right now about whether insider selling is a bearish signal or not?
Yeah, I think that it's something to consider. I mean, in addition to the valuation, in addition to sequential revenue decline quarter on quarter that we've witnessed recently, in addition to any sort of stat on average revenue per user,
Right.
you know, you've got to put this in the basket.
Said, though, to the extent you put up risk capital and you've seen a return on that risk capital,
Exactly.
you do want to realize some of it. Yeah.
And you know, I keep coming back. General Motors, their largest advertiser. You know, you take your life in your hand if you cross Facebook right now. They were willing to do that. The other thing is that I think that maybe Zuckerberg's genius as he is, maybe misunderstanding the difficulty in the ad market on that cell phone. And everyone is trying to figure out, millennial media recommended today, the little company, but trying so hard to tell people, look, you know what, the ad market's going to work. Remember, this is an ad-supported model. This is not Google. This is not a search-supported model. This is not Apple, which is an actual multiple stream model. It is an ad-supported model in a time when advertising is strong for a couple of broadcast networks, but the rest of the companies are not experiencing a big surge in advertising. It's a business story in the end. They may look, they might have said it's a social zealot media. My problem with that is that you need to have the non-social zealots, McDonald's, the non-social zealot Procter say, you know what, when I put a Tide ad on, I'm going to be able to capture that 18-year-old who's trying to figure out one day at college what detergent they should use. I don't know if this is the best way to reach them.
On the topic of
really,
other
Jim,
stuff,
that is